So we'll paint this Wildflowers motif here, and I'm going to start with this little guy over here, and I'm going to move quickly around this, and I think I'll add a little bit of purple in here, more of an indigo color. I've done this so many different times. There's different ways to do it. We can add texture later if we'd like. And I've mixed up some colors out of my tropical set that has some nice greens, palm with tiki, and you can practice doing your lines on your little scrap of paper. If you're not sure, I always start at the top and pull down and watch how heavy my hand gets as I do it. So now I'm going to move over here, and I'm painting this light leaf like so into each of these. I'm just putting them in there lightly. Right at first I went out of the lines there, and that is okay with me, but I can always go back and fix it by taking a clear brush and pulling away at that area. And if it's really wet, you want to wait till it dries before you go back. I'm going to now add a little more pigment into that as a second layer. You can wait till it dries, or I just did it right away. I'm going to be careful as I'm near this other flower here that I get into my painting. And then I'm taking a little bit of reef or purple with a lot of water so that it's more of a lavender look. And because it's a little muted, I'm going to add some pigment in here. And you can take a lot of time and slow down and really enjoy doing each one for the sake of the video. I'm going to work quickly, and I'm going to pull back some of that pigment there with my paper towel, and I'll wait to do the stems later. So the next thing that, see, I kind of had blue on my hand, and I've transferred that there. You can just, I don't need to do this because that'll be blue, but that's how I can get rid of it. So up here I'm using Ocean, which is really kind of looking like a hydrangea, although they're not really on long stems like this. I'm kind of making sure that my brush goes along that line at some point so that the line basically ends up disappearing. I've got a lot of pigment in here, so I'll take a little bit of that and move it around, making what would be like a design texturally that could read as petals. So I've left white of the paper in here. I'm going to just dab in a little bit of this purple to kind of highlight. I'm just tapping it in there, and I'll move it around a little bit and let that be. I'm going to do the same thing right here. So this time I deposited a lot of paint. Now I'm still going to leave the white of the paper in there, and I'm pulling some of that pigment out of that area so that I can move it around, and I can go over with some little swirly lines here to kind of give that impression like I did up top. And again, I'll go in and get some purple into there. Okay, so now over here you can see we've got this background. I think I'm going to go over this a little bit with some texture so that my background is not white, but I've got a little bit of texture there. And this one's a little more bold than my other designs, and it's fun to kind of change it up here and there. Water and dabbing my paper. Go into this red, pinky red pataya, and I'm almost making 8s because I want it to look a little like a berry or something where it's reflecting the light. People have taken this class with me numerous times, and everyone has come up with their own color palette and design. Hot pink, neon, very muted. It's just been a wide variety of choices and a lot of fun to see how people choose to make them all different. So I'm going to come in here and put kind of a bright green, and because I don't want my hand to be in my painting, I'm going to turn this around, and you could make that a dark green, light green, or match. Let's see, get a leaf mixture for this one here. I'm going just around the outside, but while it's still wet, I'm going to take some of that pigment and kind of pull it in, making 2 tones and a highlight right there. And now I've got another one of these, and this time I'm going to do a lavender background. Kind of working quickly here. I was kind of dancing my brush a bit. And on this time, although I teach it a little different in my formal class, I'm going to do like that and come back later. And I'm going to work on this flower here. I've mixed up this sunset and probably hibiscus. What I'm doing is just kind of going around the outside border of these petals, and I'm going to leave a little bit of the white of the paper in here, and before that dries, it's kind of a little bit muted. I think I'm going to add a little purple to it. It's kind of easy to add while it's wet here. Take a little bit of purple. Now I'm going to clear my brush and start to pull some of that pigment from the line I've done. If you wait till it dries, like I said earlier, it's going to look kind of funny, so you want to move it around while it's still wet. And now I'm going to take some additional pigment and kind of tap that in here at the bottom to give dimension, and put some of this purpley sunset color in here, and left the white of the paper. And sometimes people like to, you can either do the lines like this, which is really pretty, or you can kind of come in here and combine it like so. And you can see where I've gone too close to that pink, it's sort of bleeding into the green, which for right now is fine, but if you don't want that look, you want to be a lot more careful that you let that paint dry first. So I'm coming in here and bringing this line in without touching that pink, because I definitely do not want the green up there to combine. And you can kind of pick your hand up at certain times where these leaves meet, because drawing one straight line well is hard to do. So I kind of plan to pull it to the leaf and then pick it up and pull it again, just so that I don't mess my line up too poorly there. And if you do, you can always make another flower in the background, another leaf, and it's totally recoverable. So in here, I'm going to kind of dance my brush a little bit again. And put a little bit of blue in there, like so. And I like how that turned out, but because it's dry and a little bit wet, I've cleared my brush off, and I'm going to just lightly tap into these areas so that I'm going to actually get to the line there, so that it's not so stark white of the paper. And any place where the line is showing, I really want to get that covered up with paint. In my opinion, it looks better and more finished if you do that. It'd be better to paint over the line in this case. I'm going to come and tap in a little bit of paint here, and that'll kind of distract from the fact that I've got this bleeding paint right there, and go along those edges just to give some dimension and interest. And just do that like so. And being very careful here, I'm going to, don't have enough paint on my brush. Follow this line, keeping my hand very steady on my pinky to not drop down. And like so. And then I can paint the leaves over here. This is a little bit of a darker green, so that'll be a nice variety here. You can see how I'm leaving the white in these leaves a bit. And like here, I can come in with that color and sort of add that in for interest. And right here, I don't like how my pigment is pulling, so I've moved that around. Let me do a white clear brush there. And then we've got these little dots here, and I think I'm going to pick this blue to tie those in. So I'm coming in as best I can to fill those dots. And you don't have to just use the dots that I created. You can kind of come in here in between. It's nice if you're painting outside and you're painting what you're looking at. You can kind of see how you can give the impression of a flower versus having to be so technically accurate. So I'm going to come in here and do this leaf. And then we've got these last little berries over here. I'm going to do them the same as before. Kind of making a figure 8, leaving a little of the weight of the paper. It's up to you, the style you'd like to use. I've seen it done many different ways. A lot of times in my classes, the people that are taking them get very nervous about leaving the white of the paper. So it's a preference, and maybe after you've painted a while it is a little less concerning, but I can always just darken that up so you don't see it, or I can come in and do a little bit of grass, say, along here, and make it a little different than the other ones that I've done. And maybe don't fill it in all the way, but that's a way you can kind of recover a mistake. But I would have been fine just to leave it as it is, but I'm just showing you a couple of examples. And come along here. If you want to see the exact version of how to do this, I do sell a class where you get the slow and very specific way to create my example. So now I'm just filling in some of that white. You could leave it of the white of the paper, or take a clear brush and kind of pull that pigment in, and I'm making sure to get some of those lines included in here. That's the wrong color, so, which is fine. You can always add another layer of color at any time after something's dry. Just know it's not going to blend as well, which may be exactly what you want. And now I'll go over some of those white areas so that And putting my brush all over that will give a little bit of texture too at the end. So there you have it.